Hi. Greetings from Wisdom Lord Raphael. Before we start, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell icon and don't miss any content. This is the light novel of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. If you haven't watched previous video, I will leave the link on the description box, or you can click here. Let's start. This is Tensura Light Novel Volume 17. Tensura Light Novel. Volume 17. Fragments Across Space-Time. Chapter 2. Distant Memories. Imperial Quarrel. The time was now evening. It was time to eat, so Akira went back to his room. Velgrin was also invited to join. Since she was here, she decided to join. The maids of the palace are handpicked from a carefully selected group. They are well trained and unaffected by anything. They prepared the meal as if it were a matter of course, without batting an eyelash at the sight of the Velgrin. Minamoto is on guard duty outside the door, while Jensei stands behind Akira Sakura and waits. Only he two of them will take their seats. So, what do you plan to do now? I will be by your side, and I'll protect you. I'm glad to hear that, but can I assume that you'll be on my side? Yes, you're right. Velgrin smiles in reply and is happy just to be by Rudra's side. Confused by this Velgrin, Akira Sakura asks Yuhu, then you will eliminate conflict from this world and reassure me? Of course, that was a joke. And yet Velgrin laughed and replied. All right. If you want, I can give you this world. We'll wipe out the countries you don't want and silence the ones who complain. But first, we have to destroy the demons that are in our way. Everyone in the room was stunned to see Velgrin answer with a very innocent smile. Even the maidservant who was on duty unintentionally spilled some of the soup. They all knew in their guts that she meant what she said. That doesn't mean it's true or that it's a big deal. The words would be laughed off if someone else had said them. But there was something about Velgrin that made it so. And Jensei and others who know the essence of Velgrin know it's not a joke and that it's possible. The same was true for Akira Sakura. Hahaha, I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. You've done well to joke around so much that the maidservants take you seriously. Your joke was amusing, but I'll just take it as a compliment. They managed to cover up the situation. It was clear now that Velgrin was not an ordinary being, as the conversation at dinner made clear. Not only is she strong, but her train of thought is tricky. Akira finally understood that she would do anything for him. If she was ordered to destroy another country, Velgrin would do it. To her, right and wrong were of secondary importance, and only Sakura's will was what mattered. To be honest, this was the first time in his life that Akira was so confused. He had been born as the next emperor of the empire and had lived a life of ease. But he didn't have freedom either. He was taught from an early age that it was the duty of a king. He had everything he needed, but he had to give up what he really wanted. Love was an illusion, and he had the duke's daughter as his wife to back him up. It was like a contract and he couldn't refuse her. The wise Akira knew it before he became a young man. Transience is the truth. The world is like a dream. Because it is fleeting, you can strive to make your dreams come true with all your might. On the other hand, it is beautiful to surrender to fate and accumulate the small amount of happiness that exists in those days. It was the latter that Akira Sakura chose. To do what you love is a luxury that never comes true, even for the emperor who has everything. It was precisely because of such an Akira that Velgrin was a surprise to him. That freedom will not be bound by any man. And yet she is beholden to only one person, Akira. A strange woman. No, a goddess. Even if he was acting as Rudra, a simple favor is always better than a simple one. Feeling this way, Akira Sakura enjoyed a peaceful dinner for the first time in a long time. It is now next morning after dawn. Today there will be a meeting by the Imperial headquarters. The issue here is how to handle Velgrin. As Akira declared, acting like a lover in front of a third party is strictly forbidden. So, it was necessary to figure out how to explain Velgrin's status first. Then there was the question of clothing. Exotic clothing is out of the question. One had to dress appropriately for their status. While all the best maids gathered to arrange the various costumes, Akira Sakura, with input from Jensei and Minamoto, pondered the question of Velgrin's status. As for the maid. A lady-in-waiting can't attend a meeting, you fool. Minamoto's idea is dismissed by Jensei before he can finish. The escort is going to be difficult too. Your Majesty, I've considered that, but Velgrin Dono's appearance is too eye-catching. By all appearances, she is a foreigner, so she will be suspected of being a spy. If she was Japanese, they wouldn't have to worry about it so much. But Velgrin was too beautiful and seemingly of Northern European descent to stand out in this country. Even if he wants to introduce her as a bodyguard or a spy, they'd be asked why they are using foreigners so heavily. That said, Velgrin won't be happy if he asks her to stay at home. Besides, it was a shame to let Velgrin's forces go to waste when she was supposed to be on their side. Just when he was wondering what to do, Velgrin herself voiced her opinion. It can't be helped. I don't really like it and I don't want to, but I'm going to change my look. Is that okay? And with that, Velgrin's appearance changes. Dark hair and dark eyes. Her skin had become a pale yellow with just a hint of red. Wow, you can even do tricks like that. Minamoto was impressed with a tone of voice that was unexpected and Jensei agreed that it wasn't that strange. I guess I didn't have to worry about it. And Akira Sakura was slightly distracted. Just by changing the arrangement of the coloring, the impression was very different. Although this still made her look less Japanese, it was not too much of a distraction. The uniform given to Velgrin was the same as Jensei's. In order to attend the meeting, Akira Sakura had assigned her personal guard. Incidentally, the Emperor's Guard consists of 3 organizations. The first is the Imperial Guard Swordsman Corps. It is the only unit in the palace that is allowed to be armed. However, only the captain, Minamoto, is allowed to enter the Emperor's quarters. The second is the Imperial Palace Guards. This unit magically protected the Emperor from magic and witchcraft. They maintained a spiritual guardian barrier and were inferior to the swordsmen in terms of individual combat ability alone. Only the captain has access to the Emperor, but he has been so busy defending the capital that he hasn't been seen in the past few days. And the last organization was the Personal Guard, an individual group called the Emperor's Guardians. Not all of them, like Jensei, were well known to the public. There were those who lurked in the shadows, warding off evil. Those who had harbored supernatural powers. Those who have split from the imperial family so that they can play the part of the Emperor's shadow warriors. These men of many purposes served in the shadows, guarding the Emperor. No wonder no one knew who they were. So now Akira decided to give Velgrin a position as personal guard. Velgrin, I will appoint you as a guardian of the Emperor. With that title, it shall spare you the trouble of explaining to the others. I accept. Then I will behave like a proper vassal in front of the others. Velgrin, who wore a military uniform, replied flirtatiously. Everyone was worried about the situation, but there was no other plan. Even if something went wrong, it was nothing compared to the invaders, the demons. Under this judgment, preparations were being made. One by one, people began to gather in the main conference hall. Akira was watching them from the waiting room. The Imperial headquarters is the supreme commanding body that reports directly to Emperor. It is the army of the Emperor and is composed of both a navy and an army. At the top of both camps are the Minister of the Navy and the Minister of the Army. Both ministers were required to attend the Imperial General Meeting. Substitutes are allowed, but they are rarely present as it is considered a disrespect for the Emperor. As is customary in the past few days, most of the contents of the meeting are now reported. In the Great South Sea, the Imperial Navy was soundly defeated at sea. Even the whereabouts of survivors are unknown, and each camp is pulling out all the stops to investigate. The army, however, seemed to be someone else's problem. They make excuses because they don't have the means to go to the sea, but Akira Sakura thinks that's because they don't really understand the threat. You idiots. Now is not the time for our people to be competing with each other for credit. But the Emperor is someone who cannot say that. Because his authority is too great, his words are too heavy. If it was in private that would be one thing, but in public, he has to be careful of what he says. Unaware of Akira Sakura's anguish, an officer in the army calls out, "Who are you? Who do you think you are? This sacred headquarters is an outrageous place for a woman to enter." "Oh, so I knew it was going to be like that," said Sakura Akira. Those whose only have inflated pride are bothered by hierarchy and etiquette. So it was natural for this to happen, but if Akira Sakura had accompanied here, there would be more of a fuss. Since they all agreed on this, Jensei was given the responsibility for Velgrin. As I suspected, a man with a lot of blood on his hands is making things difficult. If he should offend her, he would not only destroy himself, but this city as well. Letting out a big sigh, Akira Sakura let out a big sigh. Perhaps it was the fate of those with Rudra's soul to be pushed around by Velgrin. Could you be talking to me? Can't you even understand that, you fool? This is why, Manga. Suddenly, the officer's ranting stopped. It was because Velgrin had grabbed the man's chest in an unnoticeable move and plunged her pistol into his open mouth. With a thin smile, Velgrin says, "I don't think it would have mattered whether you were a man or a woman in this day and age, when you could kill someone by pulling the trigger if you fought with a sword or a spear in the olden days. What is important in today's warfare is the ability to analyze the situation and to make a calm and rational decision without emotion. You don't deserve to be here. I wonder if you are not qualified to be here, screaming like that." To begin with, he was no match for force, but seeing the violence of a gun, which anyone can understand, caused a commotion among the people in the hall. You. Let go of the chief of staff. You can't have guns in here. Guards, someone call the guards." Velgrin laughs mockingly. "Silly you, fussing over a single toy. How can you be considered a glorious soldier of the Empire for that? Many faces turned red when they heard that, and many people looked at her angrily. Regardless, Velgrin shoved the chief of staff aside. Then she pointed her toy gun and pulled the trigger. A stream of water spurted out, wetting the chief of staff's crotch. You fufu. It looks like you just wet your pants. Why don't you go home and change? You. He was shaking with humiliation, but as soon as he looked into Velgrin's eyes, he gulped down his words. It was a horrifying stare. I will kill you if you make any more noise unceremoniously. The chief of staff felt as if he was being told that, and all at once the blood drained from his veins. Excuse me. I guess I got a little too excited myself. I do miss the water pistol. I felt like a child again, and my head was cold. Well, that's good to hear. If you're going to be in the meeting, you're going to have to behave yourself a little better. The chief of staff nodded coyly. He was short-tempered and a bit arrogant, but he was no fool. He had failed in their first encounter, but he hadn't made a mistake in his subsequent responses. If he had still growled at her, he would have had a heart attack from Velgrin's fury. Rudra is the only thing that matters to Velgrin. She was not amused by the idea of an incompetent man serving Rudra. So she tried to get rid of the incompetence, but she was just a little pending on the chief of staff's punishment. Just because he was short-tempered and misogynistic was not enough of a reason to eliminate him. Phew, I'm getting nicer. Maybe it's because I've been through so much on this trip. And so on and so forth, Velgrin praises herself. Needless to say, it was an overestimate. She was just happy that Rudra is with her, otherwise the result would have been different. Each time she leapt for the pieces of his soul, there were times when she couldn't find her next goal. In such cases, she had to wait for the reincarnation of Rudra to be born, which could take years or decades. For Velgrin, that time after seeing her loved ones off was like torture. In her own mind, a man's fate was sealed if he came under her influence at such a time. The chief of staff had been lucky. When the scene had calmed down, the naval minister spoke up to change things up. So, Araki Dono. And who is this woman? The naval general looks at Jensei with a commanding gaze. He's in his 50s. Jensei also got in a word. Excuse me, I'm sorry I'm late in the introductions. She is a colleague of mine, and it has been decided that she will attend the Imperial Council meeting today, by permission of His Majesty. My name is Ryo. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Interrupting Jensei's introduction, Velgrin nonchalantly took a false name. The name was a random combination of the character for dragon from True Dragon and the character for Phoenix from the divine beast that controlled the flame in this world, Ryo, the Phoenix. However, that was a big problem. Wait, Phoenix for dragon? Taking a dragon for a name is insolent. This is really insulting to the Emperor. Or are you related to your Majesty by any chance? They had calmed down now, but there was now a great deal of confusion. Jensei regrets his mistake. Did she do this on purpose? No. Velgrin Dono doesn't care what we do. Since she even disguised herself, we should have considered a pseudonym. It was his fault, Jensei reflected. Akira also let out a sigh in the other room. I've lived a long time, but this is the first time I've been pushed around this much. That's why I'm somewhat amused. Akira stood up and stepped into the chamber. This is a critical time. Isn't it strange to be disclosing our hand? He chuckled as he said this before those who noticed him stood up and hung their heads. Now that the Lord had told them so, they have no choice but to accept it. Even if they had a complaint, they could not say it openly. Thus, Velgrin in this world came to be known as Ryo. That's all for today, hope you guys enjoy it. Please check my other videos. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit the notification icon. And don't miss any updates. Thank you for watching.